Welcome to Real Women's Stories. However, this episode is a coaching episode where I get coached, interestingly enough. So previously I spoke to Toni Eastwood and we went through my plan for my WOOP, which is my wish, my outcome, my obstacle, and my plan. I was pretty vulnerable in that episode in terms of allowing you to hear how I was feeling with my big wish, my big dream, and how I was going to navigate that journey. And Toni really dig deep into my feelings. It wasn't necessarily about the practicalities in that episode. So I wanted to do a follow-up episode. So first of all, you know what I'm doing. And secondly, to explore how I'm feeling now. Am I still feeling vulnerable? Have I got my plan in action? What am I doing? What are my goals? Am I ready to take more action? Where am I at with my whole plan of my Real Women coach and Real Women Stories? So take a listen to this episode, which is very, very different from our normal episodes. But I know there's going to be some very interesting conversations that you're going to want to listen to. Last time we spoke, Toni, and we went through my WOOP, literally the week after, the platforms blew up, YouTube blew up, and we had so much feedback from the listeners. I thought it would be very important to give everybody an update of where I am, especially this week.
Oh, how exciting. Oh, yeah. Well, we have had a quick chat just to be open and honest with everyone, but I didn't want to hear too much, Lisa, because I did want this to be like a really live coaching session. So I didn't want to prepare.
As soon as we recorded the episode for WOOP, I went into action. I have to go back and think about how I was thinking and feeling. And I was so energized and zooped up by the conversation. It really helped me to step into that space of being the real woman coach and of having an extremely successful podcast. And that's what happened because, you know, we didn't predict it, but we had a huge impact on our listeners and the numbers. So that instantly started to happen. And I actually didn't know that at the time. And I'm a person that I will just carry on going, keeping up with my energy. You know, it was, I think I'd just come back after the Christmas break. And, you know, I was having, and I am still, I've got my last week at work, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, it was, I'm just on this trajectory. I'm going to go. I've got my goals in place. I'm going to start, you know, properly believing in what I'm doing, becoming that person, becoming the coach, feeling confident and speaking to people. And as I was speaking to people and saying things, you know, everything started to fall into place and action started to happen. And even last week, things were happening. And I would step out of a space where I've been and think, oh my God, you know, I've just had a conversation with someone. And now I understand why I've had that conversation. And the interesting element of this happens to us throughout our lives. But unless we tune into the signs and the signals and the messages, we just don't see and hear them. So I might be sounding a little bit vague, and I'll now explain what's been happening. So
Yeah, that's
obviously
great.
I've been carrying on working full time, Monday to Friday. Evenings I have been coaching, and I began to get more clients, which means my time was taken up in the evenings. We had people contacting us to be guests on the podcast. Some guests that I didn't know if they were going to want to be on the podcast, just because, you know, that self-doubt did come in a few times, thinking, oh, are we good enough for them? But the feedback we've had has been brilliant. So I had to have a few words with myself and say, no, you know, this is what they want to do. They want to come on the podcast. They want to share their story. And the messages that I was getting through from the podcast was people want to coach with me, which is incredible because that means that everything that I have been planning and my action is now transpiring and is happening. But you do have to step back and see that for what it is. So you do have to slow your thinking down, and you can keep your energy up and you can keep on going with all your actions and your goals. But it's also about identifying, the changes that are occurring and the ripple effects that are occurring with the changes that I'm making. So the promotional marketing campaign is in plan, still in progress. The website rebrand and the realwoman.coach is going to be launched over the next few weeks. So we've been working on that. I know my client base now. I know the type of clients that I want to be working with. So it's midlife women who kind of feel stuck, feel like it's the end of the road, but have had dreams in the past and aspirations that they want to fulfill, but just feel that they're just not sure about where they are at the moment in their lives. But it's the women that want to take action. Those women who are like, I'm in this space now, I'm ready to take action. I'm just not sure how to get there. And I've got a few sort of things going on in terms of self-belief and lack of confidence, and especially women in the executive world, because that's the world that I've come from. And I feel that a lot of women who are in that space, they seem to step back at this point. They don't push forward, they don't push through because they may feel that their boss doesn't trust them. They may feel that, they don't have the belief in themselves to work on a project, that their voice isn't heard, that they're sitting small. And what they really want to do is step into that space, but they just don't know how. Because personally, they don't feel strong enough, they don't feel confident enough. And in their personal life, they may be spinning a million different plates. You know how it is, it's overwhelming. So when your personal life is full, you have no space within your mind or your brain to start becoming creative and stepping into that confident space. So, these are the women who I'm working with now. And these are the women who I really feel that I can make a difference and help them push forward in their lives.
Oh, I'm so loving hearing all of that. That's so good. And so look, in terms of going back to that Whoop and also thinking about you, so like brilliant that you got that process has given you real clarity around like who is it that you are, one, so like your identity as a coach, who you are, and then the identity of your ideal client in terms of that senior executive woman who's ready to take that next step, but maybe holding themselves back a bit, playing a bit small. I suppose one of the things that I'm hearing is that it's all starting to come together. You obviously are really busy at the moment because you've got your full-time job, which is it next week, your last week?
Yep, I've literally got 5 days left.
5 days
5
left.
days left. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Monday's Friday. Friday is my last day.
Yeah, and I think that
Mm.
that's really important for the listeners to hear is like when you've got a goal or a really big plan for your life is sometimes we have to kind of burn the candle at both ends in able to be able to enable one to stop sort of grow and the other one to wean yourself off of it and be able to take that full step into it. But you've done that actually quite quickly, like well, it's almost 3 months since Christmas, almost to the day, isn't it? And you've managed to get clarity on what you want to do. Obviously, you had the ideas about what you wanted to do, but you hadn't actually said, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this leap. But going forward, it's like, how are you going to manage the ups and downs of being busy and then working on the business and not working in it so much? so that you actually do look after yourself in that space as well, because it's great for a short term to be able to go at it. You've got a full-time job, you're getting your clients, you're talking to lots of people, and you're running with your plan, but you've got to make sure you can maintain that energy so that you can show up and be that great coach, but look after yourself so that next time you show up to be the great coach, you are the great coach.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. And you can probably hear my voice is a little bit croaky this morning, which is telling me, and this is what I do, I listen to myself. I have this afternoon off. Next week, I finish on Friday. Saturday, I'm working in the morning. And then I've literally got a couple of weeks off in terms of giving myself some space, giving myself some time. I'll have clients that I'm working with, but in terms of the time that I used to spend at work, I'm going to give back to myself. So I can give myself a real refresh and a real reboot. And um, I think, obviously, and I'll tell the listeners that part of my plan is to be transitioning over to spending more time in Spain. So I'm flying out to Spain on the Monday, and I will be out there working on the transition of buying a new property, which will be our family forever home out there, which we're working on. So that's something that I'm doing for me. So I might be busy, but I'm still doing something for me because I'm a very inaction person. I also am going to be spending the day in a spa and having a lovely day to myself before I fly back to the UK. So that's giving myself some time back before I fly back. And I think it's really about, when I come back, my thoughts are that I would still like to go up to London, because I like being in environments that are busy where I can network, but it won't be 5 days a week. It will be 2 days a week that I'll be going into London. I will be hot desking. I'll be involved in running my promotional marketing campaign, speaking to lots of people. So the pressure of having to work 7 days a week is going to be off, and I will be able to give myself some time back, but still be in a routine. The other element, which is very important for me, and I know it's important for most people, is health and fitness. And that's one thing that I have neglected over the last 3 months. And if anybody personally knows me, um, I'm a nightmare if I don't go in the gym. I literally have maybe been in the gym 5 times this year because all of my energy was into work, and I knew I had to give something up. Something had to give. And I would always say this to my clients: you have to look at your priorities. And that was a hard thing for me, because I used to call it, that was my safe space, that was my therapy. But I knew it was for a period of time. And I'm also going to start doing more Pilates and yoga. So switching up my sessions to do a lot more, slower work on myself.
Yeah.
I think it's really
Yeah.
important. And I even attended a breath workshop the other day with a friend. It was her 50th birthday. And I thought, you know what? Normally you'd have a party, or we'd go out for dinner. I said, do you fancy going to a breath workshop? Because it's about changing the narrative. And we talk about this in coaching. You can still go out and have fun. You can still go out and do things with your friends, but just tweak what you're doing, your activities you're doing, so they fall in line with your well-being. And you'll find that there were women, they were all our age that were there. And I think it's
Yeah.
so important to take that step back. So rather than trying to run a marathon or doing a 10K or whatever, I'm now slowing my pace down, because my high energy, needs to be used up in my work and with my clients.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so good, like that piece around well-being. I think it's like the foundations to your business and to you. It's like we wouldn't build a house without thinking about how deep do the foundations need to be to support this. So I call it eat, move, sleep, breathe. And that they're absolutely I call them the fundies as well. because they're the fundamentals. If we don't have those right, then nothing we do is going to be right. And in all of my coaching, I look at that with anybody. If anything's not feeling right, I go back to the fundamentals and look at, what are we eating like? What are we moving like? Are we getting enough moving? Not just exercise, but are we moving about every day? Because we can be very sedentary. Are we actually sleeping and getting the sleep that we need to, regenerate ourselves, to clean our minds through? And then the breathing space is like, most of us have forgotten how to breathe. And I know that sounds really mad, but go into something like a breath workshop, you suddenly realize how much we can get all in our sort of here and breathing through our mouth, which means we don't breathe properly. And so just like touching base and that, just feeling back into us and like, where are we? What is our body telling us? What is what's going on in our minds? How can we quieten that for a minute to give us that place to be able to say, right, okay, what's important next to do? Because you've got your goal, you're getting in action, which I love. I'm all about action. If we don't get into action, then we're never going to move anywhere. And actually our comfort zone starts to shrink. So what is it that we are sort of being in action on? I'm all for the compound interest. So like little 1% gains every day, movement towards our goal really helps us. So one of the things that we spoke about, Lisa, with the Whoop, and you said that suddenly things started to happen. I know that a lot of people and a lot of listeners will be into things like manifestation. They'll be thinking about, the law of attraction and all of those things, which I love. That all of that stuff got me started when I was like in my early 20s. But again, I think it comes back to that being in action, because none of that works unless we get into action around what it is that we want to get round. But I also want to sort of like bust some myths and also get you to talk about how you have been spotting things and what you've been spotting that's kind of aligned, and talk about that is actually part of something in our brain called the reticular activating system. So it's the part of our brain that actually loves something to do. And if we don't give it a focus, it will listen to what we're saying and probably give us more of the negative stuff that we're talking about, that imposter syndrome and I'm not good enoughness. That's the bit of our mind that actually feeds that. If you feed, your thinking creates your reality, really. So this is what I want to say is like, yes, manifestation works, yes, law of attraction works, but not unless you get clarity on where it is you're going, and if it's about business, who's your ideal client, and then what action are you going to get into. And it's once you get that clarity that you then start to spot, oh my God, this is like, it becomes a magnet. It's like, oh my God, I've just had a chat with someone and they're just like my ideal client, or they know my ideal client. They're going to put me in touch with somebody. So talk about the things that you've been spotting.
Me and my husband wanted to go out and watch the Bridget Jones movie, and we couldn't get tickets. It was my birthday that week, and it's also Adam's past wife's birthday that week. So I normally try and avoid doing anything because Adam spends time with the kids. So he went out with his daughter, and they had a lovely day out. And the only tickets we could get was the Saturday night, was the night of her birthday. So we decided to go still, and we sort of sat down in the cinema, and the film started. And as the film kind of went on, there were signs in this film that he and we just sat there. First of all, I've got to remember it now. There's a TV show that Bridget Jones produces or directs, and it was real stories or women's stories. So Adam sort of like looked at me. It was like, oh, that's weird. And then they were having a drink, and someone started talking about, well, I'm going to be a life coach. And he sort of like looked at me and smirked. And then someone said something about a podcast. And I'm like, okay, this is weird, right? And then we didn't realize what the film was about. Now, the film was about Bridget having to deal with the fact that it was Mark Darcy's birthday, and obviously he had passed away. Sorry if I'm spoiling for anyone who hasn't seen the film.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. And it was a really emotional film for both of us to watch. But it was important that we watched it together because, again, Joanne
Mm,
always had said, I never want to be forgotten. And although we'd gone out on her birthday, we didn't forget her. And that's
yeah.
so powerful for us. Then more messages came through in the film. I think there was a character called I think it was Sarah Gibbons. Well, Sarah is my cousin's name, and Gibbons is my maiden name, and that was my grandma's married name. And my grandma was one of the reasons why I kind of started all of this when she passed. And the film ended, and Adam and I sort of like looked together. He'd been quite teary eyed, and I said, let's just sit here for a moment. Let's just sit here and reflect on what's just happened, what we've seen, what we've heard. And it was so powerful. It was like all these messages were coming through the screen to me to say, this is what you're meant to be doing. This is what you're meant to be doing. And they came from probably Joanne because we went to see it on her birthday. All the messages that had come through, it was bizarre. And then things started happening. What happened? I went for a meeting. This is another scenario. I went for a meeting first thing, and I don't normally have a meeting first thing. It was in the city. I normally start at my head office, and I walked into the local Pret. It was near Moorgate, and this lady was standing next to me, and we were sort of doing our coffees and doing this little dance together, trying to get out of each
Yeah.
other's way. And we started this conversation out of nowhere. And I said to her, so where do you work? And she said, I work around here. I'm not going to say who she is just in case. And she said, what do you do? And I said, well, funny enough, I'm actually leaving my job. I'm a full-time coach, and I'm coaching women in the executive world, da, 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 da. And she went, oh my God. She was like, that's what I do as a side hack. And I've always wanted to do it full time, but I just can't. I just can't do it. There's no
Mm,
time, there's no space. It's what I really am passionate about doing, but I have this very high powered job, and I can't leave it. And then I was like, oh, she said, let me take your details. So we kind of put each other's details in LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, where do you live? And she went, St Albans. And I was like, so do I. And that was just it was just bizarre. And that was again another message to say, Lisa, this is what you're doing. There are local
mm,
women in your area who are thinking about doing what you're doing, but you're actually doing it.
yeah.
You're fulfilling this dream that you've had, and these messages. I'm stepping into that space.
Yeah.
And there was some other stuff I went to do. I was asked to do a talk by my coach. She was running an event, and as I stepped off the train to go to the talk, this memory flicked up on my phone, and it was of a Stephen Bartlett, and it was a year ago to the day, almost to the day. It was like the day before, and that was the day that I decided to do the podcast. And I was walking into a room to speak in front of people about my story, about where I'd evolved, how it had all evolved. And it was like, oh my God, this is nuts. And every day, even to the point of when you saw the Bridget Jones film, and when we started talking about it,
Yeah.
it was in a theatre, but a small theatre, which I'd been to the breath work a few days before, and it was in a theatre, and there was about 30 people. And I suddenly thought, the lady that was taking the talk started talking about TEDx and being on stage and speaking. And I was like, okay, this is another sign. There's a local small theatre near me with 30 people. I could do one of my live shows from there. And
Yeah.
that's what we
Yeah.
spoke about in the Whoop. And you'd had a similar,
Exactly. Yeah, and I'd been thinking of you when I'd gone to an everyman cinema, and I was thinking this would be really great space to run those events. And I sort of thought about you. And then also then an advert came up, and it was it said something about every man and every woman. You know, we don't forget women. And I was like, yes, this would be a fantastic space. And of course, they're all over the country, so you could go on your tour around there. But before we go to that, I think it's so fascinating. But so there's a couple of things that happen when, once, like I say, we get that clarity on where we want to go, what we want to do. It's so much easier to say yes to things or no to things that are not going to take you in the right direction. So it could be quite easy to go, well, I'm just going to, I'm going to go and start my business, or I'm going to go and get this new job. And if you don't get exactly clear, like to a really granular level about what that looks like for you, what that feels like for you, where that is, when that is, who you'll be with, the type of people that you want to work with, you could end up taking action in the completely wrong direction and end up on the wrong building. That's what I did when I ended up in my corporate role. So it's so important that you do that work at the front end, and then you can see things so much more clearly when they do align, which is why this all works. It isn't just throw it out there, positive thinking, and it's all going to happen. It isn't. It's about putting the work in. But also, you said something else about that meeting in prep with the other lady, and I see it so much is we want to make a change. We feel it like in every cell of our body that there's something more to life. We don't really know what that is. We've got a bit of an inkling of what that might look like for us. But there are so many women out there that don't make that change. And we end up like feeling so unhappy. And it reminds me like you said, that woman saying, well, I've got it as a side hustle, which is great. It's great. But at some point, if we really want something to shift and in how we feel, and to move towards those, those dreams and those aspirations, we have to make a decision. And the word decide comes from the ancient Greek word to cut, to actually cut out other options. We have to make that decision to, like, what is it that we're going to cut away? Like, so you've had a really successful career, but you've decided that I need to cut away some of that stuff in order to go away and, fulfill those dreams. And I think that's why it's so important that when your ideal client is that woman of that age who is feeling all of that. And, some of that comes from us going through menopause. There are changes happening. Our children are getting older and they're moving away from home and they don't need us as much. Stuff's changing in our lives and making us give ourselves time for ourselves. So I think that's really important, that for the listeners and each of us going forward, you have to cut out some of the things that are going to take away the time from what it is that you really want to do. None of us are given tomorrow as a guarantee. And so, like, if we really want to make those changes, what is it that we're going to do? And at a certain age as well, as a woman, there's only so many more decisions that we can make. What do we want? That next thing. You've made the decision about your forever family home in Spain. There's only so many more hours or years of life that we have, and we can't keep just either sitting there doing nothing about it or trying to do everything, which none of us can do. And like you said, you decided to cut out exercise for a little while. It doesn't have to be forever, but to focus on the things that you can focus on. So one of the things that I love about coaching, and I use these three letter acronyms: what's working well, what needs work, and what's important next. So WWW, WNW, and what's important next. So for you, Lisa, what's working really well at the moment?
I feel that me putting myself out there and believing in myself, speaking to people, stepping into who I am. So I'm not afraid when I talk to people. So I'll give you an example. I went to a party last night. I went to a 50th, and there was a lot of people there who I haven't seen probably for about 6 months. And people are coming up going, oh, you're doing so well. Like, what's going on? And I can confidently step into my space and say, yes, it's going really well. This is who I am. This is the coach I am. These are my plans. And I, for so long, didn't use my voice, didn't communicate. Again, a lot of people who know me, I used to chew chewing gum quite a lot. And I realized when I stopped chewing gum, it was to keep my mouth, it was because I was trying to stop myself from talking. I had this nervous energy. So when I took that away, I suddenly was able to speak. With this confidence that I found, because I've done a lot of work on myself, I now don't not say anything. I speak my mind, I speak my beliefs, I speak my truth, I speak with confidence. I've practiced confidence, and I'm not afraid. It's that self-doubt of, oh, is anyone going to think I'm really egotistical? And I thought, no, don't think that. Don't think that, because that's going to hold you back. And if that holds you back, you might miss an opportunity. And I had a fantastic conversation with somebody at the party last night who I potentially could be working with, and my team could work with as well. Now, if I hadn't stepped into that confidence and into myself, it wouldn't have worked. So that is what's working for me right now.
And I love that as well, because within that, like, confidence doesn't just come.
No.
If we sit and wait until we're confident, then it's never going to happen. So, it's as I always bang on about, it's about getting into action. It's the getting into action that builds your confidence. And as you've said, you put the hard work in around that. There is lots that you can do, like coaching with someone like yourself, that actually can help you to use and develop tools that can help build your confidence. It's stepping out there. Just that little step outside of your comfort zone, means your comfort zone gets a bit bigger and then a bit bigger. And so our confidence lives on that just one step outside of our comfort zone. And a lot of people don't realize that. They sit around waiting for confidence, and it's never going to happen. So it's taking that one tiny step. It's that little 1% push outside of that comfort zone that builds that. And I also, like you said, you practiced it, because it is a practice. And that's why I often like to call my space the dojo, because it's about getting in there and practicing and falling over and getting up and then doing this exercise. Right, what's working well? What do I need to work on next? What needs work? It's doing that. It's
Yeah.
actually putting your lab coat on, taking out the emotion, looking at the data and going, okay, that went really well. I liked that. And okay, I'm going to do more of that and less of that. So yeah, I love that you're saying it's a practice,
It is
because
a practice. And I was even practicing it last night, before I had this other conversation. Because normally, like, you go into a room, it was quite dark. I thought I recognized this guy. And I think a lot of people do this. So I said, hi. He said, you're right. I said, yeah. I said, you don't remember me, do you? And he was like, not sure. I was like, we had a great conversation in this situation, this scenario. And then he sort of looked at me and went, oh, you think I'm this guy over here, don't you? And I just, now, Norman, now look, and I think we have to do that. It's putting myself in, how many people do we walk past and we don't say hello to? Like
yeah.
a guy walked down the street and he dropped something. How many times do we walk past that person that's dropped something and go, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I stop people and say, sorry, excuse me, you've dropped something. And this guy was like, oh my God, thank you so much. That was my train ticket. It was my weekly pass if I'd
Oh
lost
my
it.
God, yeah.
Right. So there are things that you can do. And that's a tiny thing. That's speaking to a stranger who I don't know and just having a connection and making some kind of engagement. Last night, I engaged with somebody who wasn't the right person, but that didn't work. Oh, well. So I'm out of my comfort zone. I felt a bit silly, but I didn't feel that stupid. it wasn't that
Exactly.
bad. So
Yeah.
it is putting all these things into practice.
And
So
it's a way of having a laugh, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
it's like just it's just being relaxing. So there's a couple of things you said there that I want to just pull out as little tools for other people as well, but for all of us
yeah,
is um I have this, it's called an OTL. Okay. So it's one of my targets every day is I call it opportunities to love. And I know that sounds a bit like, ooh, it could be a bit twee, but it comes from the work that's about, it's called positivity resonance. And what happens is when we laugh or love or share or just smile at someone or, you know, stop someone in the street and pick up their ticket and say hi, that is actually creates something called a positivity resonance. And actually our bodies vibrate at a much higher level when we're showing love and care and gratitude and laughing. So that is one of my I have 3 little targets that are called opportunities to love every day. And it might be just smiling at the person shoving my, you know, groceries through at a mad rate and squashing all my strawberries. But I go, no, I'm going to go smile at them and go, oh, I love your nails, or just like talk to people, or look up when you're in an elevator and look someone in the eye and smile. The other thing I love doing is when I'm walking along is looking at people's faces and
yeah,
smiling at them and
yeah,
holding the eye contact, because people go like that, or other people go, oh, and that might be the only time that person ever has someone smile at them that day. And you just don't know what's going on in their lives. So I think that's really great that you talk about that, because the one thing that it does, it resonates for them and us. We get more out of that than the other people. So that, I think that's a really great example of you doing that. But
mm,
there is actually some science behind why that can make us feel good and the other person. Because I bet you that guy last night, it's gone on and told someone that that happened last night, and it's fun and it just makes us feel lighter,
yeah, 100%, 100%.
but builds
One
confidence.
one of the Mel Robbins is just just a big human in my life right now.
Yeah,
And you know, for anybody who hasn't read her book, go out and read it. It's the let them theory.
yeah,
And I am now using her practices not only in my life but with my clients as well. And she's going to feature in a big way within the podcast. The let them theory, the high level stuff is really, if I when I was approaching that guy and when I spoke to him, if I had reacted in a particular way to his reaction, it could have gone horribly wrong.
mm,
But I knew in my mind that when he said I'm not the right person, in my head, I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll let him do whatever he's going to say, because he could have gone and sniggered and laughed. But I also thought about my inner self and about, it's not about just let them, it's about let you. So, how am I going to behave and how am I going to react after that conversation? And like you said, I made light of that conversation. I could have literally died, fallen through the floor. Oh my God, made us both feel uncomfortable. It would have gone completely pear shaped. But because I just decided to let him have his reaction, and then I let myself think, oh, okay, I've made a mistake. It's a bit of fun. When I see him in the party, we were just making eye contact and smiling at each
yeah,
other the rest of the
yeah,
night. So it could have gone
yeah,
either way. Now, that's just a very, very high level way of thinking. This conversation sparked off me thinking about Mel Robbins and how
yeah,
I am using her theory within my day-to-day life, and how I feel that she is so important. You know, this she was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, um, and I relate to Mel Robbins. First of all, one, I had a message that came through, and this is another thing. When
yeah.
I was away for my 50th, I met a guy, and I told him that I was doing my coaching, and he said, "You really remind me of Mel Robbins." And I was like, "Who is this
Oh,
Mel
amazing.
Robbins?" Right now, I'm not like her. For anyone listening, I am not like Mel Robbins. She is incredible. You know, not that I'm not, but she
Lisa, stop dissing yourself. Let's stop that
no, but
now.
she is incredible, and she has got a decade of, you know, building up her brand and who she is and her messages and her theories. And she's also, you know, at 50, the same age as me. This she embarked on her journey. She was working full time. She had a lot going on, and one of her friends asked her to go and do a motivational speech at this event, which she didn't realize was a TEDx event. And literally, she started then doing speaking gigs. And over the last 10 years, she's grown and grown and grown and grown. And now she is one of the top leading motivational speakers and is incredible, and has released this book, The Let Them Theory, which she has evolved. I think it was somebody else's, but she's taken it forward and she's evolved it. And it just makes sense. The whole theory makes sense. As long as you practice it correctly, it makes sense. You know, that was a big message for me when she came forward, and when I saw her, and I thought, you know, she's just a very inspirational person to me and for me. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing is running a competition for the listeners. I will be offering women a chance to spend the day with me in June. Mel Robbins is live in London. So the competition is to win a day with me, the Real Woman Coach. You will have a morning session of coaching with me one-on-one. We will go out for a lovely lunch, and then we will go and see Mel Robbins, and we will also meet Mel Robbins as well.
Oh
So I
my
have
God.
one ticket for someone to
What a
come with me.
prize. That's amazing. I love that. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna enter everything so I win that one with you. So also, like, putting our lab coats back on then, what needs work then for you? So there's been lots of great things happening, but what would you say if you stood back and gave yourself some time to think? So what do you think needs some work?
What I need to do, or what I'm going to be doing, is putting a routine together for myself once I've left on Friday,
Yeah.
and once I've come back from Spain, to start creating a routine that I can get into. Because when you've been working up in London, I have a routine. I get up, obviously, before I'd go in the gym, I'd then leave the house. I knew what train to get. And for me, routine is very important. So, like I said, I definitely want to go into London 2 days a week, because then I can keep up with. I still want to feel a part of the buzz and energy of the city. I love it. It's in me. It's part of me. That's why I want to, and why I am coaching women in the executive world, because that's my place where I enjoy being. But it's making sure that I've got time to spend with my family, my friends, health and fitness, my lovely dog who's looking at me and sitting next to
Oh,
my lovely doggy. Hello, Gooby. Yeah, it's making sure that I take care of myself, and that although I've got my clients and I'm coaching, I have a routine. I like to be in routine. I think it's very important to have a routine Monday to Friday, um,
yeah.
and to structure my days
Mm,
correctly.
yeah.
So there's no point in me leaving my full-time job, thinking about going to move to Spain and having all these dreams of slowing down, um, if I don't do that. So
No.
that's the work that I need to do from,
Mm.
from next month, is making sure that I make time for myself and I allocate time, which is a big thing that we do in coaching.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much in there, Lisa. There's and this is where it comes back to that Whoop model is, the science behind that is, if we get clarity on where we want to be and what we want to be doing and what our big goal is and what that will achieve for us, but at the same time, hold really clearly the things that are going to get in our way, recognizing that things will be hard, looking at, okay, what are those obstacles? What might be hard for me? Then actually we can plan for it. But successful people from the research behind Whoop demonstrated it was the ones that actually recognize this might be hard. These are the things that are going to get in the way. These are the things that I might worry about. They're the ones that actually overcome them and actually can help, reduce some of the worry by just like naming it, recognizing it, putting something into place around it. And then what that does is it stops us kind of regurgitating that, because what we can do is we can regurgitate a bit like what cows do. They eat the grass, they chew the grass, they swallow it, they sick it up, and they eat it again. And that's what we do with our negative thoughts. I know it sounds disgusting, but that is what we do. And we go, we chew over and over and over. And then that is what can trigger our reticular activating system in a negative way. So like if you said, like that lady, she was worried about money, then guess what? That bit of our brain goes, oh, she's worried about money, so I'm going to show her everything that is going to give her even more fear and lack around money. And then it's hard to get out of that. So if we can recognize it, name it, we can do something about it, we can put something into our plan, but then our focus goes back onto, okay, what's our next step in the direction of the goal? And it keeps us, it's not to say that we won't worry. It's not to say that, like you say, those thoughts don't come up, because they do. But we can flip the switch and, as I say, get into action around that. And I think that's so important for us to sort of, like cut ourselves some slack. It is okay to have a negative thought or a fear there, but we can do something about it if we actually name it. They say name it to tame it, don't they? We name it, we think about, okay, so why is that coming up for me? Okay, what works well for me around money? What needs work around money? And what's my plan? Then you've got something to go at, and it doesn't stop you being in action towards your goals at the end of it. I think the other thing as well, you're so right about that routine. And I always use like an athlete as an example, because we can probably all align ourselves with, not that we're necessarily athletes, but if you for many years have wanted to be a world champion or an Olympian, when you show up in the arena for whatever your discipline is, you're not just going to show up in 4 years' time at the Olympics and get on the track and win a race. You're just not. So what is it that you need to be doing now and every single day for the next 4 years to prepare you to even stand a chance of winning that race or taking that shot? And I think it's really important that we realize that sometimes, or most of the time, when we're going after something big or a great goal, is the work and the routine is the boring and the mundane. Sometimes it's about saying, right, it's 2:00 on a Monday and this is what I do. It's a Tuesday and it's a Thursday, so I'm in London and this is what I'm going to do when I'm there. And it's I don't know, 6:00 in the morning. So what I do is I get up, I meditate, I go to the gym. It's having those things in place that mean that that goal will be achieved. So when you say about that routine, what do you think are the important things that need to be in it? One, for you and self-care and family, and two, for the work itself, and then three, for that energy.
I think the energy is, I'm very good in the mornings. I'm much better in the mornings than I am in the evenings. So for me, it will be making sure that if I have anything to do in terms of, I would imagine, showing up, being who I am, networking, getting out there, that I will probably do in the mornings. I will probably get up, and I think I used to get up at 5:30, which I think is too early. 6:00 is good, where I can get in the gym, get my workout out the way, and then be ready at 7:30, probably 8:00 to start working. And I will be able to work, but also having necessary breaks. So in my head, splitting up my day, 8 till 11, have a break for half an hour, work again. Then I will probably go out for a lovely long walk with my dog, or if I'm up in London, I'll make sure I go for a walk. I always do that anyway. And then the afternoon would be probably trying to be a bit more creative. So the mornings will be networking, coaching. Majority of my work I want to do in the mornings. If someone, obviously, I can adapt and flex, but
Yes, of
I don't
course.
want to, I'd like it to have a cutoff point that I know at 4:30 I'm going to stop, and that is the time where I can start thinking about what I'm going to be doing with my family or doing something for myself. So winding down my day, start to wind down my day at 4:30. So by the time I get to the evening, I've spent time with the family or I've done something with my friends. And then the evening I can get to bed at a reasonable time so I can have my sleep.
I'm just
Yes.
thinking, like, just to finish off this is like, what's important next for you then? So we've done what's working well. We know what needs work. It's about your routine, and it is absolutely, let's practice it. Let's see what it's like. Then let's review, and then, okay, what needs work? How do I fix that? But the next is, so what is the next important thing? So I call it win. What's important next or now for you to kind of go away? What would an action be from today's session?
To network as much as I possibly can, because I think is practicing more about my confidence, speaking to people. I've one of my quests that I'm working on is to really encourage more women in their midlife to embrace and evolve. And that message is extremely important to get out there. I have, and I will say this, I have applied for a TEDx talk, a local TEDx talk. The theme was change and continuity in the ever evolving world. And when I saw the theme, it just rang bells for me to say, we need to start these conversations about midlife earlier on. So it's not just a conversation for women, it's a conversation for men, for younger peers, for children, because I've practiced this with all of those types of people, demographics, and I have had nothing negative. I've only had, oh my God, enlightenment. My kids and the younger people that I've spoken to in their sort of, between the ages of late teens and early 20s are like, so like life is not a rush then? Oh, no, life is life. You have a span of life. It doesn't stop for women because you're going to have a kid, and I've got to get to the point where I have a kid and then it's over, because then my kids leave home and I'm in midlife, and they're hearing all this stuff about menopause and all the negative stuff. It doesn't have to be negative. So my next course of action, which is really important to me, is to be networking more, be speaking more about this quest that I have to lots of different people. And if I don't get the TEDx talk, that's absolutely fine. But I've spoken it out there into the world, and I've started to create a fantastic narrative that I can now pass on to lots of women, men, people, to whoever I'm speaking to. And I did it last night at the party. Someone said, "Can you believe we're 50? We're over 50." I said, "Well, I'm 51." I said, "I'm bloody loving it." And they were like, "Yeah, look at what you're doing." I said, "Exactly. You shouldn't be going, 'Oh, we're 50. Can you believe we're 50?' Yes, I can. And you know what? I've got more energy than I've ever had before. I've taken all the decades of my learning, my skills, and I'm seeing women that I'm coaching doing exactly the same." So that is one of the most important things that I'm going to be doing from this call, and having the confidence,
Okay.
because I know I've got the confidence to do that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. So I would just like stretch and challenge, as you know, I like to do. So that's kind of it. It's really important, but it's quite generic what you said. So
Okay.
where would you look to network so that you can find where your ideal clients? So you're speaking to this message to the right people.
Okay. So there is we have a number of buildings around London, and one of the buildings which is right opposite us is it's Sessions House Arts. I think it's Art Sessions House, and there is another provider that runs a membership at this building. It's in Farringdon, and there is an organisation, a women's networking group called Albright, and I get
Oh, I know,
their
yeah.
emails, and they, I believe, have space in that building. So the building for me had a very big connection because it's my safe space. It's, we've got a building across the road, and I've been staring at this building for the last 8 years. And the other day I walked in there and I was just like, I'm just interested. Like I saw redevelopments going on, and the provider turned around, it's Notel. They said, yes, we run a membership club. We run a hot desking area. There was all part of the memberships. You can join events like mindfulness, breath work. And then I just remembered that Albright, I'm sure, have a networking group that go there. So that's my course of action, is to join that building or the club and start networking within those spaces.
Okay, so that's more. There's a lot more specifics there, and yeah, I think it's definitely for you about more putting yourself out there, and I am sure you get the TEDx talk, because like, who wouldn't want to hear all of that and hear from you? But even like you say, even if you don't, because we can't control whether you will or won't, it's you've started to think about and scope that speech and that talk, and so now that can be done everywhere. If you didn't get the gig at
Yeah.
TEDx, but if you get the gig at TEDx, you could just be telling everyone, I'm going to be at TEDx in October, watch this space. And then obviously all the other spaces that you are looking to run your
Promotional
your
marketing.
tour,
Yeah.
your promotional marketing tour, which I am so excited about, Lisa.
It's,
I'm really, really proud to see you on this journey, Lisa, and to have been, to have met you through our podcasting, and to be working with you, and hopefully be doing a lot more of that.
absolutely. I have, yeah, and I think it was definitely a meeting of minds, and
Mm.
things happen for a reason. When we started talking, and you were the person that I wanted to be on this episode, because you make me feel comfortable. I can be vulnerable. I can be myself. And so thank you as well, Toni, for allowing me that
Oh,
space, and being being the person that interviews the Real Woman coach, because you are an inspiration to me too. Following my really interesting and informative coaching session with Toni, I'm feeling a lot calmer. I was stressing out a little bit, last week, and the anxiety was sort of like stepping into play about how I'm going to be feeling, the challenges I've got. But what it made me realize was I've got a lot worked out. I've got a good plan in action. And speaking to Toni, all I've done is I've tweaked that plan. Change for me is exciting. It's also scary, but I do feel that fear and excitement can overlap. It's how you perceive your fear. If you can channel that fear into excitement and into curiosity and into, yeah, I think it's curiosity. It's what is coming next. I'm curious and I'm excited about what is coming next. As I have been networking quite a lot and meeting quite a lot of new people, I've got some women that I'm going to be working with. I'm super excited. However, there are a couple of slots that I have available. They are only literally probably going to be available for the next month to 6 weeks. So if this is the kind of work that you want to do, I would encourage you to get in touch with me. So I do have that availability in place for you. So you can contact me via email at TheRealStoriesPodcast@gmail.com, or you can have a look at my website, realwoman.coach. And yeah, if you want to make some changes, are you that woman who is sitting there in her midlife or approaching it thinking, what's next for me? Because life doesn't stop here. We evolve as women, and you have got a whole another few decades of life to live. So, I could be that coach that can help you. And I would encourage you to don't second guess, don't think, send me an email, because those spaces are very limited. This episode has given me a lot to think about, a lot to sort of schedule into my routine. I've got to start actioning my goal. And with that, we're going to take a break for a couple of weeks, because I'm going to follow my line of thinking that Toni instilled in me. And that is to start thinking about my routine and making sure I've got balance in my life. And I think Easter is a really good time to break. And I think it's good for you guys also to think about, is this coaching for you? Is this something that you want to embark on with me? So I'm going to leave you for a couple of weeks just to mull over, listen back through this episode whilst I'm working in the background. And we will pick up after the Easter holidays, where we'll have a brand new series of Real Women's Stories with some exciting work that I'm going to be doing based on the Mel Robbins Let Them theory. And if you're interested in Mel Robbins, buy her book before you listen to the series. And then I will be delivering some really strong coaching sessions for you, which is a good resource for you to have if you're not if you're not ready to coach yet. But it will at least give you a resource that you can use, and you will enjoy the podcast even more. So I will see you in a couple of weeks for my next series of Real Women's Stories.